The stars looked cold and distant through the observation window of the Calthrine command ship. Commander Zekthor stood with his forearms crossed behind his back, watching the alien vessels move through space with surprising grace. The humans called this group Endeavor Group according to their intercepted transmissions. 47 warships, each one bristling with weapons and energy shields. Zekthor had spent 3 weeks observing them. 3 weeks of careful scanning, analyzing every weapon system, every power signature, every tactical formation they used. The Calthrine sovereignty had not become a galactic power by being reckless. They survived by being smart, by calculating every risk, by never fighting an enemy they could not defeat. The data streams flowing across his command console told him everything he needed to know. The human fleet possessed advanced technology, yes, but nothing the Calthrine could not handle. Their ships were well armed, but fewer in number than a standard Calthrine battle group. Most importantly, this appeared to be their entire military force. The Calthrine had searched all available databases, monitored all human transmissions, and found no evidence of additional fleets. Strategic analysis complete, his second officer reported, her voice filled with confidence. The human fleet represents a moderate threat level. Our calculations show a 76% probability of decisive victory with our primary armada. Zekthor nodded slowly. 76% was acceptable. More than acceptable, actually. The Calthrine sovereignty had expanded its territory for 2 centuries by identifying weak species and absorbing them before they could become threats. These humans occupied 12 colony worlds with valuable resources. Their technology could be useful. Their territory connected 3 important trade routes. Most importantly, they were alone out here on the galactic frontier. No allies, no defense pacts, no one who would come to their aid. The perfect target. Convene the council, Zekthor ordered. Tell them we have found our next acquisition. The council chambers on the Calthrine homeworld were carved from black stone, a reminder of their species' humble origins before they reached the stars. 12 council members sat in a circle, their scaled faces illuminated by holographic displays showing the human fleet from every angle. We have an opportunity, Zekthor began, standing in the center of the circle. The humans are weak, isolated, and unprepared. Our intelligence confirms this is their only significant military force. If we strike now, strike hard, we can force their surrender before they understand what is happening. What of galactic law? One council member asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer. The humans have not threatened us. A preemptive attack would be noticed. Galactic law is for species that fear consequences. Another council member replied with a dismissive gesture. The humans are newcomers. They have no friends, no reputation. Who will speak for them? Who will challenge us? The debate lasted 2 hours, but the outcome was never in doubt. The Calthrine had built their empire on calculated aggression. Every species they had conquered had been carefully chosen, carefully isolated, carefully destroyed. The humans would be no different. The vote was unanimous. 3 days later, the Calthrine armada assembled in deep space. 200 warships, each one a testament to Calthrine military engineering. Zekthor stood on the bridge of the flagship, watching his fleet organize into attack formations. They would hit 3 human colonies simultaneously: New Perth, Armstrong Station, and Terra Nova. Civilian targets, poorly defended, maximum psychological impact. The goal was not extermination. The goal was terror. Break their spirit fast enough, and the humans would surrender before their fleet could even respond. It was a strategy that had worked 17 times before. All ships report ready, his tactical officer announced. Weapons are charged. Jump coordinates are locked. Zekthor gave the order with a simple gesture of his upper right arm. Begin the operation. The Calthrine fleet disappeared into faster-than-light travel, emerging seconds later in orbit of 3 unsuspecting human worlds. The orbital defenses were minimal, outdated, designed to ward off pirates rather than a full military assault. They lasted less than 10 minutes, then the bombardment began. New Perth was hit first. The planetary shields collapsed under sustained fire, and kinetic bombardment destroyed the capital city in a matter of hours. 4 million humans lived on New Perth. Most of them died in the first wave. The survivors huddled in underground shelters, sending desperate messages into space, begging for help that could not possibly arrive in time. Armstrong Station and Terra Nova fell the same way. The Calthrine were methodical, efficient, merciless, They recorded everything, broadcasting the destruction across all frequencies. Let the humans see what happened when they refused to submit. Let them understand their place in the galaxy. Admiral Sarah Chen received the first distress signal while the Endeavour group was conducting routine patrols near the Kepler sector. She was on the bridge of her flagship, the UHSV Indomitable, reviewing supply reports when the communication officer's face went pale. "Admiral," the officer said, his voice barely above a whisper, "we're receiving emergency broadcasts from New Perth. Multiple broadcasts. They're under attack." The bridge fell silent. Chen rose from her command chair slowly. Her eyes locked on the main display as the reports came flooding in. Civilian casualties in the millions. Cities burning. The enemy identified as Calthrine. "Show me the attack fleet composition," Chen ordered, her voice cold and steady. The tactical display materialized in front of her. 200 ships. A full battle group, maybe more. They had hit 3 worlds simultaneously with overwhelming force. This was not a raid. This was an invasion. "Get me unified command," Chen said quietly. "Priority Alpha 1 encryption. Tell them we have a situation that requires protocol scorched sky." Her executive officer stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Admiral, that protocol requires authorization from—" "I know what it requires," Chen interrupted. She turned to face him, and he saw something in her eyes that made him step back. It was not anger. It was not rage. It was something far colder, far more terrifying. "These creatures attacked 3 civilian colonies," Chen continued. "They killed 4 million people, most of them non-combatants because they thought we were weak. They thought what they saw out here was all we had." She turned back to the display, her hands clasped behind her back. "Activate Protocol Scorched Sky. Recall all 11 fleets to human space, and send a message to the Calthrine sovereignty." "What should the message say, Admiral?" Chen's expression did not change. "Tell them they made a mistake. Tell them they saw 1 fleet and thought they understood humanity. Tell them they were wrong." She paused, watching the casualty numbers continue to climb on her screen. "Tell them we're going to teach them what humanity looks like when we stop being polite." Across human space in 11 different sectors, the recall order went out simultaneously. Fleet commanders received the same message, the same priority code, the same simple instruction. "Come home. Bring everything. We're going to war." The Calthrine thought 1 fleet was enough to terrify them. They were about to discover what humanity looked like when all 11 fleets answered the call. The recall beacon reached Earth's solar system exactly 18 hours after the attack on New Perth. Admiral Marcus Webb stood in the command center of First Fleet headquarters, watching the decoded message appear on his screen 3 times before he fully believed what he was reading. Protocol Scorched Sky. 3 colonies hit. 4 million dead. Enemy identified as Calthrine sovereignty. Webb was 70 years old and had served in the Unified Human Space Fleet for 49 of those years. He had seen pirates, smugglers, and the occasional border skirmish with aggressive species. But this was different. This was a declaration of war against humanity itself. "Get me the other fleet commanders," Webb ordered. "Secure channel quantum encryption. I want everyone on the line in 10 minutes." First Fleet was the oldest of humanity's space forces, built to defend humanity's home system. 230 warships, including the massive dreadnoughts that had never left Sol's orbit. They were the guardians of Earth, the final line of defense. Webb had always secretly hoped his fleet would never need to leave the solar system. That hope died with 4 million colonists. 9 minutes later, the holographic displays around Webb's command table flickered to life. 10 faces appeared, each one representing a fleet commander somewhere in human space. Some looked angry. Some looked shocked. All of them looked ready. "I assume you've all read the briefing," Webb began without preamble. "The Calthrine hit us hard. They hit us where we were weakest. They killed civilians by the millions." He paused, letting that sink in. "Sarah Chen has requested full fleet mobilization. I'm approving it. We're going to show these things what they started." Admiral Jackson of 5th Fleet spoke first, his dark eyes narrowed. "What's our target?" "The Calthrine homeworld?" "Eventually," Webb replied. "But first we teach them a lesson. We dismantle their military piece by piece. We make sure every species in this galaxy understands what happens when you attack humanity." The commanders began coordinating immediately. Each fleet had its own specialty, its own purpose. Together they represented the full military might of human civilization. First Fleet would bring overwhelming firepower. Sol Defense's dreadnoughts were designed to fight off entire invasion forces. Now they would become the invasion force. Second Fleet, the Endeavour group under Chen's command, was already closest to Calthrine space. They would be the first to engage, the vanguard of humanity's response. Third Fleet, called Hammer by those who served in it, specialized in siege warfare. Their planet-cracker weapons could reduce a world's surface to molten slag. They would make sure the Calthrine understood the price of their actions. Fourth Fleet operated under the designation Ghost Protocol. Their ships used stealth, technology that made them nearly invisible to conventional sensors. They would strike where the enemy felt safest. Fifth Fleet, Avalanche, commanded carrier groups. Thousands of fighters would swarm enemy positions, overwhelming defenses through sheer numbers and coordinated attacks. Sixth Fleet, the Anvil, consisted of mobile fortresses, massive ships with armor plating meters thick and shields that could withstand sustained bombardment. They would be the immovable objects against which the Calthrine would break. Seventh Fleet, Scalpel, specialized in precision strikes. Fast attack ships that could appear, destroy a target, and vanish before the enemy could respond. Eighth Fleet was experimental. Maelstrom tested prototype weapons and cutting-edge technology. They were unpredictable, dangerous, and devastatingly effective. Ninth Fleet, Long Night, controlled deep space interdiction. They were experts at blockades, at cutting supply lines, at making sure nothing escaped when humanity wanted it trapped. 10th Fleet was perhaps the most terrifying. Reaper consisted primarily of autonomous drone swarms. Millions of small hunter-killer units controlled by advanced AI systems. Once deployed, they would hunt enemy vessels relentlessly until destroyed or recalled. 11th Fleet had the designation Prometheus. Officially, they were humanitarian support, colony defense, and disaster relief. Unofficially, every ship in Prometheus was armed with weapons that would make a pirate fleet jealous. They were sheepdogs pretending to be sheep until the wolves showed up. Transit times? Webb asked. 2nd and 7th can reach Calthrine space in 3 days, Chen reported. The rest of us will arrive in waves. 4 days, 6 days, 8 days for the slowest. Good, Sarah, you and Marcus take point. Hit their outer defenses hard. Make them commit their reserves. The rest of us will arrive before they can recover. Webb's expression hardened. I want total information dominance. 4th Fleet, penetrate their networks. Find out everything about their military structure. 10th Fleet, begin drone deployment at maximum range. 9th Fleet, establish blockade positions. Nothing gets in or out of Calthrine space once we arrive. The commanders acknowledged their orders, but Admiral Torres of 6th Fleet raised a hand. Marcus, what about the Galactic Council? They're going to notice 11 human fleets moving simultaneously. They'll demand we stop. Webb smiled, though there was no humor in it. Let them demand. We're not the ones who started killing civilians. Besides, by the time they convene an emergency session, it'll be over. On the Calthrine homeworld, Strategic Command had initially celebrated the successful attacks. The humans had gone silent after receiving their surrender demands. Intelligence suggested they were preparing to negotiate. Everything was going according to plan. Then the sensors began detecting unusual activity in human space. Commander Zekthor, the intelligence officer, reported, confusion evident in her voice. We're detecting massive energy signatures. Multiple human fleets are mobilizing. Multiple. Zekthor stepped closer to the display. How many ships? We're not sure. Initial counts suggest at least 50 vessels in the first group. But Commander, there are other signatures. Dozens of them. Maybe hundreds. Zekthor felt something cold settle in his chest. That's impossible. We surveyed their entire military. 47 ships. That was everything they had. Perhaps they're civilian vessels trying to mount a defense, another officer suggested hopefully. The sensor operator shook her head. Negative. These readings are consistent with military-grade power systems. And Commander, they're not just mobilizing. They're moving toward us. Multiple vectors, multiple approach angles. Over the next 48 hours, Calthrine intelligence worked frantically to understand what they were seeing. Long-range sensors tracked energy signatures across a dozen star systems. Communications intercepts revealed human fleet designations they had never heard before. 1st Fleet, 3rd Fleet, 5th Fleet, the numbers kept climbing. How did we miss this? Zekthor demanded, staring at the constantly updating tactical display. How did we not know they had this many ships? His intelligence chief had no answer. The truth was simple and terrible. Humanity had been keeping its fleets separated, spread across their territory, each one operating independently. The Calthrine had found one fleet and assumed it was the only fleet. They had made the oldest mistake in warfare. They had assumed their enemy was as weak as they appeared. 2 human fleets will arrive at our border in approximately 60 hours, the tactical officer reported. Our defensive positions are ready. 200 ships against their estimated 100. We still have numerical superiority. Zekthor nodded slowly, though uncertainty gnawed at him. And the other fleets? The other signatures we're detecting? Unknown arrival times. Days, maybe weeks. Prepare the reserve armada, Zekthor ordered. All 500 ships. I want them ready to deploy at a moment's notice. Sir, if we commit the reserves, we'll have no defensive forces left for the homeworld. If we don't stop them at the border, the location of our reserves won't matter. Zekthor turned away from the display, his confidence shaken but not broken. We can still win this. 2 human fleets against 700 Calthrine warships. The numbers favor us. But deep down, in a place he did not want to acknowledge, Zekthor wondered about those other fleets. The ones still coming. The ones they could detect but not count. How many ships did humanity actually have? And more terrifying, why had they kept them hidden? Across the galaxy, species monitored the developing situation with growing concern. The Calthrine were a known quantity, aggressive but predictable. The humans were newcomers, barely 2 generations old as a spacefaring civilization. Now those newcomers were mobilizing everything they had. The question everyone asked was the same. Would this be a war or a massacre? And if it was a massacre, who would be doing the massacring? In 3 days, everyone would have their answer. The first human ships arrived at the Calthrine border exactly on schedule. Admiral Chen's second fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel in perfect formation, their weapons already charging, their shields already raised. Beside them, 7th Fleet appeared like ghosts materializing from darkness. Commander Zekthor watched them arrive from his command ship, stationed with the Calthrine defensive fleet 2 light minutes away. 100 human vessels against 200 Calthrine warships. The numbers still favored his forces, but something about the way the humans moved made him uneasy. They did not hesitate. They did not negotiate. They simply began advancing. All ships prepare to engage, Zekthor ordered. Focus fire on their command vessels. We end this quickly. But before the Calthrine could fire the first shot, everything changed. 9th Fleet, Long Night, appeared behind the Calthrine formation. Not attacking, just there. 150 ships that materialized in perfect blockade positions around every major Calthrine star system. Simultaneously, within minutes they had established overlapping fields of fire that covered every possible escape route. Nothing would leave Calthrine space. Not a ship, not a shuttle, not even a probe. Rear guard. Someone shouted on the Calthrine command channel. We have enemy vessels behind us. Zekthor spun toward his tactical display, his forearms moving frantically across the controls. How did they get behind our lines? How did they? The answer hit him like physical blow. While he had been watching Chen's fleets approach from the front, another fleet had circled around and cut off their retreat. The humans had not come to fight a battle. They had come to fight a war. Deploy the reserves, Zekthor commanded, his voice tight with controlled panic. All 500 ships. Get them here now. The reserve armada began mobilizing from their staging areas, preparing for immediate jump to the battle zone. But 4th Fleet, Ghost Protocol, had been watching those staging areas for the past 3 days. Stealth ships that the Calthrine had never detected suddenly appeared among the reserve fleet. Not to fight, but to sabotage. Supply depots exploded. Fuel reserves ignited. Navigation beacons started transmitting false coordinates. Within an hour, the reserve armada was in chaos. Ships colliding with each other. Systems failing. Commanders screaming contradictory orders. And still 4th Fleet was barely visible. Their ships vanishing back into stealth mode before the Calthrine could even target them. Our supply lines are collapsing, the logistics officer reported, her voice edging toward hysteria. Someone is destroying our fuel convoys, our ammunition transports, everything. We can't maintain our forward positions without supplies. Then 10th Fleet arrived, Reaper. They did not arrive as ships. They arrived as a swarm. Millions of autonomous drones, each one no larger than a ground vehicle, poured into Calthrine space like a metallic plague. They moved with insect-like precision, forming clouds around Calthrine vessels, attaching to hulls, burrowing through armor plating. Each drone was a hunter. Each drone had one mission: find enemy ships and destroy them. Calthrine point defense systems tried to engage, but there were too many targets, too many angles of attack. For every 1,000 drones destroyed, another 1,000 took their place. They were relentless, tireless, and absolutely merciless. "They're inside the ship," a Calthrine captain screamed over the comm. "They're in the walls, in the systems, they're everywhere." His transmission cut off as his ship suffered a catastrophic power failure, atmosphere venting into space. Zekthor realized with mounting horror that humanity was not fighting a conventional war. They were conducting a systematic extermination of Calthrine military capability. Every fleet had a specific purpose, and together they formed a perfect killing machine. "Contact human command," Zekthor ordered desperately. "Tell them we want to negotiate. Tell them we'll discuss terms." The response came from Admiral Chen herself, her image appearing on Zekthor's main screen. Her expression was carved from ice. "You will be heard when we're finished," Chen said simply. Then the transmission ended. The Calthrine Council convened an emergency session, watching real-time reports of their military being dismantled. The humans had not even deployed their full strength yet. 4 fleets were engaged and the Calthrine were already losing. "How many more fleets are coming?" one council member asked, though she already knew no one had an answer. "Our intelligence now confirms at least 11 separate human fleet designations," another replied. 4 are currently engaged. 7 more are approaching." The chamber fell silent. 11 fleets. Not one, as they had believed. 11. "Recall all forces to the homeworld," the council leader finally decided. "We make our stand here. Every ship, every defense platform, everything we have. The humans want to fight? We'll give them one they'll never forget." It was exactly what the humans wanted them to do. The Battle of Calth 7 began 3 days later. Calth 7 was the primary shipyard system for the Calthrine sovereignty, a fortress system with orbital defense stations, minefields, and hundreds of automated weapons platforms. The Calthrine had committed their entire remaining navy, 512 ships, to defend it. Against them came 3 human fleets: 2nd, 7th, and 5th. Admiral Jackson's 5th Fleet. Avalanche opened the engagement. The carrier groups launched their fighter wings first, thousands of small craft that swarmed forward like angry hornets. The Calthrine point defense opened fire, filling space with weapons fire. Then the human fighters did something unexpected. They scattered. Half the fighters broke off and circled around, while the other half accelerated directly into the teeth of the Calthrine defenses. The Calthrine focused their fire on the attacking wave, shooting down hundreds of fighters. Too late, they realized it was a feint. The fighters that had circled around came in from the flanks and above, where the defenses were weakest. They struck the orbital platforms first, silencing the automated weapons. Then they turned on the Calthrine ships themselves. While 5th Fleet's fighters kept the Calthrine occupied, 2nd and 7th Fleets struck from different vectors. Chen's ships hit hard and fast, targeting command vessels and communication ships. 7th Fleet's precision strikes took out weapon systems, shields, engines. They did not destroy ships if they could cripple them instead. The Calthrine fought with desperate courage. They had numerical superiority and defended prepared positions. They should have won. But humanity had been practicing warfare for thousands of years before reaching the stars. They understood tactics, strategy, and combined arms operations in ways the Calthrine could not match. Every move the Calthrine made, the humans had already anticipated. Every strategy they tried had already been countered. The battle lasted 8 hours. At the end of those 8 hours, the Calthrine Navy effectively ceased to exist. 89% casualties. 456 ships destroyed or rendered inoperable. The survivors scattered, jumping to random coordinates, fleeing in any direction that might offer safety. Human casualties: 23 ships damaged, 4 ships destroyed, crew losses in the hundreds rather than thousands. The galaxy watched the recordings in stunned silence. Species that had considered humanity weak, primitive, barely worth noticing, suddenly reassessed everything they thought they knew. The humans had not just won. They had achieved a victory so one-sided it bordered on impossible, and they had done it with only 3 of their 11 fleets. On the Calthrine homeworld, Zekthor sat alone in his command center, staring at the casualty reports. His entire military, everything his species had built over 2 centuries of expansion, was gone. Destroyed in less than a week. And the worst part, the part that made his blood run cold, was that 6 human fleets had not even engaged yet. First Fleet was still coming. Third Fleet was still coming. Eighth Fleet was still coming. The ones human tactical communications referred to with respect, even fear. The truly dangerous ones. A communication request appeared on his screen. Human origin. He accepted it, past the point of refusing. Admiral Webb's face appeared. The old human looking at Zekthor with an expression that might have been pity. Commander Zekthor, Webb said quietly, you made a mistake. You saw one of our fleets and thought you understood us. You thought we were weak. He paused. We sent 11 fleets because we wanted to show you, and everyone else watching, what happens when you attack humanity. But understand this. Those 11 fleets are not our total military strength. They are our rapid response forces. Zekthor felt his world collapse around those words. If you continue fighting, Webb continued, we will deploy our siege fleets, our world breakers, the armadas we keep in reserve for existential threats. And when we're done, there will be no Calthrine sovereignty. There will be no Calthrine worlds. There will only be debris and memories. Webb leaned forward slightly. Or you can surrender now completely unconditionally, and maybe, just maybe, your species survives this. Zekthor closed his eyes. There was no choice. There had been no choice since the moment they attacked New Perth. I surrender, he said quietly. The Calthrine sovereignty surrenders unconditionally. The Galactic Council chambers on the neutral station Concordia Prime had never been so crowded. Representatives from 47 species filled the amphitheater-style seating, all of them demanding to be heard simultaneously. The chaos was unprecedented. Ambassador Tishar of the Vrelny Compact managed to establish order by simply projecting her voice above everyone else. This council demands that humanity cease its military operations immediately. Your response to the Calthrine attack has been excessive, disproportionate, and what? Admiral Sarah Chen's holographic image materialized in the center of the chamber, interrupting Tishar mid-sentence. Chen had not been invited to speak, but she had inserted herself into the broadcast anyway. Effective? Decisive? Terrifying? The council chamber fell silent. Chen looked around at the assembled species, her expression calm but her eyes hard as steel. The Calthrine sovereignty attacked 3 civilian colonies without warning or provocation, Chen continued. They killed 4 million people, most of them non-combatants. They did this because they thought we were weak. They thought we would surrender. She paused. You will observe what happens when you mistake our kindness for weakness. But you cannot simply destroy an entire civilization, Tishar protested. There are laws, protocols, accepted standards of... Where were those laws when New Perth burned? Shen's voice remained level, but everyone heard the steel beneath it. Where were these protocols when civilians were being slaughtered? Where was this council when we needed it? No one answered. We're not here for your approval, Chen said quietly. We're here to make sure this never happens again. To humanity or to anyone else. The transmission ended, leaving the council in stunned silence. 3 days later, First Fleet arrived at the Calthrine homeworld. Admiral Webb's dreadnoughts took up positions in high orbit, their weapons trained on the planet below but not firing. They just watched, waiting. On the surface, the Calthrine population lived in absolute terror. Every city, every installation, every life was at the mercy of the human ships above. But the bombardment they expected never came. The humans simply watched. Then Third Fleet arrived. Hammer Admiral Rodriguez's ships positioned themselves at every major Calthrine colony world. 19 planets, each one suddenly hosting a fleet of human warships equipped with planet cracker weapons. The message was clear. Humanity could destroy every Calthrine world simultaneously if they chose to. Still, they did not fire. The Calthrine government was paralyzed with fear and confusion. Why were the humans not attacking? What were they waiting for? The answer came when 8th Fleet, Maelstrom, demonstrated their newest weapon. Admiral Kim's experimental fleet approached a minor Calthrine colony world called Vec 4. Without warning, They activated a device that sent out a pulse of electromagnetic energy across the entire star system. For 6 hours, every piece of Calthrine technology stopped working. Power grids failed. Communications went dark. Life support systems struggled on backup power. Starships became dead metal drifting in space. The entire technological infrastructure of an advanced civilization simply ceased to function. After 6 hours, the pulse ended. Everything came back online. The humans broadcast a simple message to every Calthrine world. This is what happens if you resist. This is what happens if you force us to use our full capabilities. We can do this to every one of your worlds. We can leave you in darkness until your civilizations collapse from within, or you can accept our terms. On the Calthrine homeworld, the council convened in an underground bunker, surrounded by military guards who could not protect them from the ships in orbit. The recordings from Vec 4 played on repeat, showing the chaos of those 6 hours. "We have no choice," Council Leader Mextra said, her voice hollow with defeat. "They're showing us mercy by not attacking, but that mercy has limits." "Mercy?" Commander Zekthor spat the word. "This is humiliation. They're demonstrating their power, showing the entire galaxy what they can do to us." "Yes," Mextra agreed quietly, "and that is the point. They want everyone to see." Zekthor's second officer, the one who had originally calculated the 76% chance of victory, worked at a secondary terminal. She had spent the past week accessing every piece of human military data she could find. Most of it was encrypted beyond her capabilities, but Fourth Fleet had left certain files accessible, almost as if they wanted the Calthrine to find them. What she discovered made her hands shake. "Commander," she said quietly, "I've found something in the human military databases. Information about their fleet organization." "What is it?" "The 11 fleets we've encountered are designated as Rapid Response Forces. They operate independently in different sectors, using different doctrines and strategies." She looked up at Zekthor, her face pale. "Sir, they're kept separated deliberately." "Why would they separate their forces?" "Because humanity is afraid of what they could accomplish together. Each fleet is designed to operate independently to prevent centralized control, to prevent any single commander from wielding too much power." She pulled up a document, translating the human text. "This is from their military doctrine files. The 11 fleets represent humanity's capacity for measured response. They are sufficient to address any regional threat while maintaining democratic oversight and preventing the concentration of military power that historically led to tyranny." Zekthor felt something cold settle into his chest. If these 11 fleets are their measured response, what do they deploy for unmeasured threats? The officer's hands trembled as she accessed another file. According to this, they maintain siege fleets in deep reserve, world-breaker armadas, total warfare doctrines. "Sir, the 11 fleets we fought are what humanity uses when they're showing restraint." The chamber was silent for a long moment. Finally, Mextra spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Contact Admiral Webb, tell him we're ready to hear their terms." The human demands were broadcast across all Calthrine frequencies. Impossible to ignore, impossible to refuse. Complete disarmament. Every military vessel, every weapons platform, every armed satellite would be dismantled under human supervision. Reparations for the 4 million dead. Payment in resources, technology, and labor to rebuild the 3 destroyed colonies. Permanent monitoring stations. Human personnel would be stationed in every major Calthrine system, observing, reporting, ensuring compliance. Total transparency. All Calthrine military planning, all governmental decisions affecting defense or foreign policy, would be shared with human authorities for the next 100 years. The Calthrine would become a protectorate, not conquered but controlled, allowed to govern themselves but never again allowed to threaten others. The council accepted every term without debate. They had no leverage, no bargaining position, no hope of better conditions. They signed the documents with all 4 hands shaking. But something unexpected happened in the weeks that followed the surrender. 11th Fleet, Prometheus arrived with construction vessels, medical ships, and humanitarian supplies. They did not come to occupy or to punish. They came to help rebuild. On New Perth, human engineers worked alongside Calthrine survivors to restore infrastructure. Medical teams treated the wounded without regard to species. Supply convoys brought food, water, and materials to communities that had lost everything. On Calth 7, the shattered shipyards, humans helped restore basic life support and civilian facilities. Not military capabilities, but the infrastructure needed for people to survive. Commander Zekthor found himself working with a human engineer named Captain Maria Santos, coordinating the restoration of power grids on one of the orbital stations. They worked in silence for days before Zekthor finally asked the question that had been gnawing at him. "Why are you helping us?" "After everything we did?" Santos looked at him for a long moment before answering. "Because the war is over. You lost, you surrendered. Killing you now would be murder, not justice, and we're better than that. But we killed millions of your people." "Yes, you did, and we destroyed your military. We dismantled your sovereignty. We ended your ability to ever threaten anyone again." Santos turned back to her work. "But we're not monsters. We wanted you to learn not to die. Fear is temporary. Understanding lasts." Zekthor thought about that as he worked. The humans had shown overwhelming force, had demonstrated the capacity for total destruction, but had chosen mercy at the end. It was a lesson more powerful than any weapon. Across the galaxy, other species watched and learned the same lesson. The recordings of the Calthrine War were studied in military academies and government chambers on 100 worlds. The conclusion was always the same. Humanity had introduced a new concept to galactic warfare: overwhelming force to end wars quickly, followed by mercy to prevent future ones. They called it proportional escalation followed by structured peace. The galaxy gave it a simpler name: human patience, the period before humanity stopped warning you. But the peace would not last. 3 months after the Calthrine surrender, every major government in the galaxy received the same message. It came from beyond explored space, from a region where no species had successfully established colonies. The Vorthrex Collective, a hive-mind empire that had been expanding for millennia, consuming civilizations and incorporating their technology. They had watched humanity's display against the Calthrine with great interest. Their message was simple: a formal challenge for total war, species versus collective. They would arrive in human space in 6 months. Humanity would either submit or be exterminated. The galaxy held its breath, waiting to see how humanity would respond. 6 months had passed since the Calthrine War ended, and the galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted. Human space was now surrounded by a buffer zone that other species entered only with explicit permission. Trade agreements suddenly favored human interests. Most importantly, not a single act of aggression had been directed at humanity or its allies. The 11 fleets had returned to their stations, scattered across human territory. But everyone knew they could converge again. The threat was implicit, unspoken but absolutely understood. On New Perth, the reconstruction was nearly complete. Where cities had burned, new buildings rose from the ashes. The 4 million dead could never be replaced, but humanity had ensured their sacrifice would not be forgotten. A memorial stood in the rebuilt capital, listing every name, every life lost to Calthrine aggression. Commander Zekthor stood before that memorial, his forearms hanging at his sides. He had been assigned to the reconstruction effort as part of the Calthrine reparations. 6 months of working alongside humans had taught him more about them than all the intelligence reports combined. They built it larger than necessary. Admiral Chen's voice came from behind him. Zekthor turned to see her approaching, dressed in a simple duty uniform rather than formal military attire. "The memorial. It has space for more names." "You expect more attacks?" Zekthor asked. "We prepare for them," Chen corrected. "There's a difference." She stood beside him, looking up at the towering structure. "Your people attacked because you thought we were weak. You saw one fleet and made assumptions. What did you learn?" Zekthor considered the question carefully. That assumptions are dangerous. That appearances can be deceiving. That humanity is far more powerful than we imagined. "No," Chen said quietly. "You learned that humanity is far more restrained than you imagined. The power was always there. We simply chose not to show it until we had no choice." Before Zekthor could respond, Chen's communication device chirped. Her expression changed as she read the message, her face hardening into the mask of cold determination he had learned to fear. "I have to go," she said simply. "Something's happened." She was gone before Zekthor could ask what. In the Galactic Council chambers, emergency session alarms blared across every diplomatic channel. Representatives arrived in a panic, demanding information, getting only fragments and rumors. When Ambassador Tishar finally called the session to order, she looked like she had aged a decade in hours. "The Vorthrex Collective has sent a message to all major galactic powers," she announced, her voice shaking slightly. They have formally challenged humanity to total warfare. The chamber erupted in chaos. The Vorthrex were a nightmare that most species tried not to think about. A hive-mind empire that had existed for thousands of years, consuming civilizations and growing stronger with each conquest. 40 species had fallen to the Vorthrex. Not defeated, consumed. Their populations absorbed into the collective, their technology integrated, their worlds repurposed. No one had ever successfully stopped the Vorthrex advance. Species fled before them or died trying to resist. The only reason the current galactic civilization existed was because the Vorthrex had not yet reached this far into the galaxy. Until now. What was humanity's response? Someone asked. We're waiting for it now. The wait lasted exactly 12 minutes. Then Admiral Webb's image appeared in the center of the chamber, broadcast across every communication frequency in known space. This time he was not alone. Behind him stood the other 10 fleet commanders arranged in a semicircle. We have received the Vorthrex challenge, Webb began without preamble. We have analyzed their capabilities, studied their tactics, and reviewed their history. They have destroyed 40 civilizations. They have absorbed billions of individuals into their collective consciousness. They have never been stopped. The council members leaned forward, desperate to hear humanity's response. Would they flee? Would they try to negotiate? Would they surrender? Webb's expression did not change. The Vorthrex watched our conflict with the Calthrine sovereignty. They saw what we did with 11 fleets. They concluded that we would be worth absorbing. He paused, letting the silence stretch. They made the same mistake the Calthrine made. They saw our restraint and confused it with weakness. Behind Webb, Admiral Chen stepped forward. When the Calthrine attacked 3 of our colonies, we responded with 11 fleets. 11 fleets to protect 3 worlds and send a message to the galaxy. The Vorthrex have now threatened all of humanity, all 300 of our worlds, all 45 billion of us. Admiral Jackson spoke next. We're not sending 11 fleets. The council chamber was silent, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Admiral Rodriguez finished the thought, her voice cold as vacuum. We're sending 33. The chamber exploded with noise. 33 fleets. That was impossible. That was more military force than some empires possessed in total. Where had humanity been hiding 33 fleets? Webb raised a hand and the noise subsided. The 11 fleets you witnessed are our rapid response forces. They handle regional threats, border disputes, pirates, and hostile species that need to be taught lessons. They are designed for measured responses. The Vorthrex are not a measured threat, Chen continued. They threaten our species with extinction. For that, we deploy our siege fleets, our world-breaker armadas, the forces we keep in reserve for existential conflicts. Across human space, massive shipyards that had been hidden in deep space, in asteroid fields, in orbital positions that avoided casual observation, suddenly blazed to life. Ships that had been in standby mode for decades began powering up. Weapons that had never been test-fired outside of simulation started charging. The 11 fleets had been humanity's police force, their peacekeepers, their diplomatic tools. What emerged from those hidden shipyards was something else entirely. The siege fleets were larger, heavier, more heavily armed. Each ship was a mobile fortress designed to break planetary defenses and destroy enemy infrastructure. They did not capture territory. They eliminated threats. The world-breaker armadas included weapons that humanity had hoped they would never need to use. Weapons that could destabilize stars, crack planets, or sterilize entire systems. Tools of last resort, built in the terrified years after humanity first reached the stars and realized how hostile the universe could be. On the Calthrine homeworld, Zekthor watched the transmissions with growing horror. His people had faced 11 fleets and been crushed. The Vorthrex would face 33, and 22 of those were the real military, the true face of human warfare. He found himself feeling something unexpected. Pity. Pity for the Vorthrex, who had no idea what they had challenged. In the council chambers, Ambassador Tashar managed to find her voice. Admiral Webb, this level of military force is unprecedented. The council must ask, where did humanity acquire the resources to build such an armada? Webb's smile was thin. We built them over 2 centuries, Ambassador. While other species were exploring and trading and establishing colonies, humanity was preparing. We remembered our own history. We knew what could happen when you were unprepared for war. He gestured to the fleet commanders behind him. These 33 fleets represent 200 years of human paranoia, human fear, and human determination to never be victims again. But the cost, Tashar started. Was acceptable, Chen interrupted. You asked us once why we kept our fleet separated, why we didn't centralize our military power. This is why, because we knew that if humanity ever needed to deploy this much force, it would only be because our survival was at stake. And if our survival was at stake, we wanted to be ready. Admiral Kim of 8th Fleet stepped forward. The Vorthrex sent their message to intimidate us, to make us surrender without fighting. They believe they are the apex predators of the galaxy. Her expression was cold. They're about to learn that humanity has been apex predators since we lived in caves and hunted megafauna with pointed sticks. Webb brought the transmission to a close. To the Vorthrex Collective, if you're monitoring these communications, you challenged us to total war. You wanted to see humanity's true face. Your wish is granted. We're coming for you with everything we have. And when we're done, you'll understand why the other species in this galaxy fear us. The transmission ended, leaving the Council in stunned silence. In the weeks that followed, the 33 fleets began their assembly. The 11 rapid response fleets would form the vanguard, the tip of the spear. Behind them would come the siege fleets, the heavy hitters designed to break enemy strongholds. And behind them, held in reserve, were the world-breaker armadas, weapons of last resort that humanity prayed they would not need. On New Perth, Velnara, a young Calthrine officer who had witnessed the Battle of Calth 7, found herself in a conversation with Admiral Chen one evening as they reviewed reconstruction progress. Admiral, Velnara asked quietly, my people attacked 3 of your colonies. You responded with 11 fleets. The Vorthrex threaten all of humanity and you send 33. Is there a number that would make you send more? Chen considered the question for a long moment. If someone threatened Earth itself, if someone attacked our homeworld, we would deploy everything. All of it, every ship, every weapon, every resource we have. We would burn the galaxy to ashes before we let Earth fall. She looked at Velnara. But yes, there is always more. We have contingencies beyond contingencies, weapons we've never revealed, strategies we hope we never use. Why tell me this? Because you'll tell your people and they'll tell others, and eventually everyone in the galaxy will understand. Chen's expression softened slightly. We don't want to be feared, Velnara. We want to be left alone. We want to build our worlds, raise our families, and explore the universe in peace. But we learned long ago that peace requires strength. So we built strength, more strength than we ever wanted because the alternative was unacceptable. In the Galactic Council chambers, the Calthrine ambassador stood to address the assembly. He was nervous, his forearms trembling slightly, but his voice was steady. We made humanity angry by attacking 3 colonies, he said quietly. We paid for that mistake with our military, our sovereignty, and our pride. The Vorthrex have threatened humanity's entire species. He paused, looking around at the assembled representatives. May whatever gods you believe in have mercy on the Vorthrex, because humanity certainly won't. The council members sat in silence, watching the tactical displays that showed the 33 human fleets beginning their movements. The fleets moved with purpose, with precision, with the confidence of a species that had faced extinction before and refused to accept it. Across the galaxy, species watched and understood the message. Humanity had shown restraint with the Calthrine because the threat was limited. Against an existential threat, they would show no restraint at all. The Vorthrex had wanted to test humanity's strength. They were about to receive an education in human warfare that 40 civilizations had learned too late. 1 fleet had been enough to terrify the Calthrine. Humanity had answered with 10 more, and the Calthrine had surrendered. Now the Vorthrex would face 33 fleets, and the galaxy would finally see what humanity looked like when they stopped holding back.